Welcome to Echoes of Dharma. Picture this: a master archer stands before a Zen monk, drawing his bow with perfect precision. The arrow flies straight and true, aimed directly at the monk's heart. But something extraordinary happens. The arrow seems to pass right through him, as if he were made of air itself. Now think about your own life. How many arrows are flying at you right now? That person who always knows exactly what to say to ruin your day. The constant worry about money keeping you awake at night. The feeling that no matter how hard you try, you're always falling short. These are the arrows of modern life. Most of us have been hit by so many that we are walking around wounded, carrying the pain of every harsh word, every disappointment, every moment when life didn't go according to plan. But what if you could become like that monk? Not by building walls around your heart, but by discovering something Zen masters have known for over 1,000 years. Your peace of mind is completely independent of what happens around you. Over the next hour, you'll hear ancient stories that mirror your modern struggles. Ask yourself, what arrows am I letting wound me? What would change if I could develop unshakable inner peace? The first story begins with a young monk who received the most brutal insult of his life. There once lived a young monk named Kojin in a remote mountain monastery. Kojin was known throughout the region for his gentle nature and sincere devotion to his practice. But there was one thing that could instantly shatter his peace: criticism and harsh words from others. Before I continue, pause and think about yourself. Is there someone in your life whose words have the power to instantly ruin your day? Maybe it's a boss who finds fault with everything you do. Maybe it's a parent whose approval you still desperately seek. Maybe it's that voice in your own head whispering you're not good enough every time you make a mistake. One day, a wealthy merchant arrived at the monastery, demanding to speak with the abbot. When told the abbot was in deep meditation and could not be disturbed, the merchant became furious. He turned to Kojin, who was sweeping the courtyard, and unleashed a torrent of insults. "You lazy monks," the merchant shouted. "You sit here doing nothing while real people work hard to support you. You're nothing but parasites, worthless beggars who contribute nothing to society. You especially look like you've never done an honest day's work in your life." Stop for a moment. Think about the last time someone said something truly hurtful to you. Remember that feeling in your chest, that burning sensation, that immediate desire to defend yourself or strike back. That's exactly what Kojin felt. Kojin's face burned with shame and anger. His first instinct was to defend himself, to argue back, to prove the merchant wrong. His mind raced with all the things he wanted to say. How dare this stranger judge his life? How could he possibly understand the value of spiritual practice? But then Kojin remembered something his master had taught him. When someone throws poison at you, you have a choice. You can drink it, or you can let it fall to the ground. Here's where something profound happened that could transform how you handle every difficult interaction in your life. In that moment, Kojin had a realization that changed everything. This wasn't really about him at all. Look at this merchant more closely. His clothes were disheveled, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. His hands shook not just with anger, but with desperation. This was a man in pain, lashing out at the world because he didn't know how else to cope with whatever was crushing him inside. This is what Zen Buddhism calls mirror wisdom. The understanding that what people say to us is often a reflection of what's happening inside them, not a truth about who we are. Think about it honestly. When you're happy and at peace, do you go around insulting strangers? Of course not. When you're stressed, angry, or in pain, that's when harsh words pour out of you. Ask yourself right now, what if that difficult person in your life isn't trying to hurt you at all? What if their harsh words are really just their clumsy way of expressing their own pain, their own fear, their own feeling of being overwhelmed by life? The merchant's harsh words were like arrows shot from a place of pain, not truth. And here's the crucial insight that could change your life. You don't have to catch those arrows. You don't have to make them your reality just because someone threw them at you. Instead of reacting defensively, Kojin bowed deeply to the merchant and said something that stunned everyone present. Thank you for your words. I can see that you're carrying a heavy burden. Would you like some tea while you wait for the abbot? Imagine for a moment what would happen in your life if you responded to criticism this way. What if, instead of getting defensive when someone attacks you, you looked for the pain behind their words? What if you realized that their harsh words say more about their inner state than about your worth as a person? The merchant was completely stunned. He had expected an argument, a defensive response, maybe even anger. Instead, he was met with compassion and understanding. His shoulders sagged, and for the first time, Kojin could see past the angry mask to the broken person underneath. I lost my entire shipment in a storm last week, the merchant whispered. My family will have nothing for the winter. I came here hoping for some kind of miracle, some sign that the universe hasn't abandoned me completely. This moment reveals something profound about human nature that most people never realize. When we stop defending ourselves and start truly seeing others, we often discover that their attacks weren't really about us at all. They were about their own struggles, their own fears, their own pain. But here's what I want you to understand about Kojin's response. This transformation didn't happen because he was naturally more patient than other people. It happened because he practiced what Zen masters call emotional alchemy, the art of transforming negative experiences into wisdom and compassion. Think about the most difficult person in your life right now. What if their behavior toward you isn't really about you at all? What if it's about their own battles, their own wounds, their own desperate attempts to feel safe or significant? This doesn't excuse their behavior, but it can free you from taking it personally. For years, Kojin had been working on this practice. Every time someone criticized him, every time he felt that familiar burn of anger or shame, he would ask himself, what is this person really trying to say? What pain are they expressing? What can I learn about patience, about compassion, about the human condition? Kojin spent the next hour listening to the merchant's story, offering him food and comfort. By the time the abbot emerged from meditation, the merchant had transformed from an angry stranger into a grateful friend. He never forgot that young monk who taught him that kindness could exist even in the face of cruelty. This is the first great teaching of emotional invincibility. Your emotions are like weather, they come and go, but you are the sky that remains unchanged. When someone insults you, you don't have to become the insult. You can simply observe it, understand it, and let it pass through you without leaving a mark. The secret lies in understanding that your peace of mind is your most precious possession, and you alone have the power to protect it. No one can make you feel inferior without your consent. No one can disturb your inner peace unless you give them permission. Ask yourself right now, how much energy do you spend defending yourself against other people's opinions? How much of your peace do you surrender to people who probably aren't even thinking about you 5 minutes after they've criticized you? What would change in your life if you could stop taking things so personally? When you stop taking other people's words personally, when you start seeing their attacks as expressions of their own pain rather than truths about your worth, something amazing happens. You become free. Free from the exhausting cycle of defending yourself. Free from the constant worry about what others think. Free to respond with wisdom instead of reacting with emotion. But here's where Kojin's journey gets really challenging. What if the most difficult person in your life isn't a stranger who attacks you once and disappears? What if it's someone you have to deal with every single day, someone whose criticism feels like a constant assault on your sense of self-worth? That was exactly the test Kojin was about to face, and what he learned would challenge everything he thought he knew about dealing with impossible people. The challenge that would transform Kojin's understanding came in the form of Tenzo, the monastery's head cook and Kojin's greatest tormentor. Tenzo was a harsh, critical man who seemed to take pleasure in pointing out every mistake Kojin made. Day after day, as Kojin tried his best to help in the kitchen, Tenzo would berate him. "You chop vegetables like a blind child," Tenzo would shout. "Your rice is overcooked. Your cleaning is sloppy. How do you expect to achieve enlightenment when you can't even handle simple kitchen duties?" I want you to think about someone in your life who pushes your buttons on a regular basis. Maybe it's a micromanaging boss who criticizes everything you do. Maybe it's a family member who always finds something wrong with your choices. Maybe it's that coworker who seems to enjoy making you look bad in front of others. How does it feel when you think about that person? Do you feel your shoulders tense up? Does your stomach tighten? Do you find yourself rehearsing arguments in your head, planning what you'll say the next time they attack you? For months, Kojin endured Tenzo's treatment, growing more resentful with each passing day. He began to dread kitchen duty, his stomach knotting with anxiety every time he heard Tenzo's voice. Sound familiar? That's the exhausting reality of letting someone else control your emotional state. One evening, after a particularly brutal day of criticism, Kojin approached his master, barely able to contain his frustration. "Master," Kojin said, "I try to practice patience and compassion, but Tenzo makes it almost impossible. His words are like daggers. How can I find peace when someone is constantly attacking me?" Here's what's beautiful about this moment. Kojin was asking the same question you might be asking right now. How do you maintain your peace of mind when someone in your life seems determined to destroy it? The old master smiled knowingly. "Tell me, Kojin, when you look at Tenzo, what do you see?" "I see a cruel man who enjoys making others suffer," Kojin replied without hesitation. Think about how you see that difficult person in your life. What story have you created about their motivations? What assumptions have you made about why they treat you the way they do? Be honest with yourself. What narrative are you telling yourself about this person? "Ah," said the master, "but that is not what I see at all." Would you like to know what I see when I look at Tenzo? This question would lead Kojin to discover one of the most transformative teachings in all of Zen Buddhism. And it's going to challenge everything you think you know about difficult people." The master continued, "I see a man who holds himself to impossibly high standards. I see someone who learned long ago that perfection was the only way to avoid disappointment. I see a person who criticizes others because he criticizes himself even more harshly." Suddenly, Kojun's entire perspective began to shift. What if Tenzo wasn't his enemy at all? What if Tenzo was simply a wounded person, doing the best he could with the emotional tools he had? This is where Zen Buddhism reveals one of its most profound insights. The people who trigger us the most are often our greatest teachers because they show us exactly where we still have work to do on ourselves. "But Master," Kojun protested, "his treatment of me is unfair. Is it?" the master asked gently. "Or is Tenzo offering you the most valuable gift of all, the opportunity to develop unshakable inner strength? Tell me, has his criticism made you more careful in your work?" Kojun had to admit that it had. Under Tenzo's harsh scrutiny, his knife skills had improved dramatically. His attention to detail had sharpened. His work had become more precise and mindful. "Here's something I want you to consider. What if the most difficult person in your life is actually helping you grow in ways you never realized? What if their challenges are forcing you to develop patience, resilience, or skills you wouldn't have developed otherwise? Think about it honestly. That demanding boss who never seems satisfied, has working for them made you more thorough, more organized, more resilient? That critical family member have their comments, however painful, pushed you to improve yourself in certain areas? And has dealing with his difficult personality taught you patience?" The master continued. Again, Kojun nodded reluctantly. He had certainly developed more self-control than he'd ever had before. "Then Tenzo is not your enemy," the master concluded. "He is your teacher. But here's the secret that most people never learn. You must demand excellence from yourself, not from him." This is where the profound Zen teaching reveals itself, a principle that could revolutionize every difficult relationship in your life. In Zen Buddhism, we learn that trying to control others is the source of all suffering. But when you focus on perfecting your own response to difficult situations, something magical happens. You become unshakable. Think about this seriously. How much energy do you waste trying to change other people's behavior? How much stress do you create by expecting others to meet your standards, your values, your way of doing things? What if all that energy could be redirected towards something you actually have control over yourself? The master explained, "Set the highest standards for yourself. Be impeccable in your work, flawless in your behavior, uncompromising in your own integrity. But offer grace to others, understanding that they are fighting battles you know nothing about, struggling with wounds you cannot see." This doesn't mean you become a doormat or accept abuse. It means you stop taking other people's behavior personally and you focus entirely on what you can control, your own response. The next day, Kojun returned to the kitchen with a completely different mindset. When Tenzo criticized his vegetable cutting, instead of feeling attacked, Kojun thanked him for the feedback and asked how he could improve. When Tenzo complained about the rice, Kojun listened carefully and adjusted his technique. But the most remarkable change was in how Kojun began to see Tenzo himself. He noticed that the head cook arrived earlier than anyone else and worked later than everyone. He saw how Tenzo would sometimes pause and massage his arthritic hands when he thought no one was looking. He observed that Tenzo never ate until everyone else had been fed. This is what happens when you stop defending yourself and start truly seeing others. You begin to understand that their behavior often has nothing to do with you and everything to do with their own struggles, their own pain, their own way of trying to contribute something meaningful to the world. Slowly, Kojin began to understand that Tenzo's harshness came not from cruelty, but from a deep sense of responsibility and his own inner pain. This realization transformed everything. One evening, as Tenzo was cleaning up after a particularly long day, Kojin stayed behind to help without being asked. As they worked in silence, Kojin finally spoke. "Tenzo-san, I've been watching you, and I see how much you care about this kitchen, about feeding everyone well. Your standards are so high because you truly want everything to be perfect for the community." Tenzo stopped his cleaning and looked at Kojin with surprise. For a moment, his harsh mask slipped, and Kojin could see the lonely, dedicated man underneath. "Someone has to maintain standards," Tenzo said quietly. "If we become careless with small things, we become careless with everything." In that moment, Kojin experienced what Zen masters call seeing with the heart, the ability to look beyond someone's behavior to understand their deeper motivation. Here's what I want you to consider. What if that difficult person in your life isn't trying to hurt you at all? What if they're just trying to feel safe or valuable or in control in the only way they know how? What if their harsh words or unreasonable demands are really just their clumsy attempts to protect something they care about deeply? This understanding didn't happen overnight, and it didn't make Tenzo's criticism disappear. But it transformed how Kojin received that criticism. He had learned to separate the message from the messenger, to extract value from difficult interactions without taking them personally. From that day forward, kitchen duty became Kojin's favorite time of day. He had discovered that when you stop trying to change others and focus entirely on perfecting yourself, you gain access to a kind of peace that no external circumstance can disturb. This is the second great teaching. Every difficult person in your life is actually a teacher in disguise, showing you exactly where you need to grow. The question isn't how to change them, it's how to use their presence in your life to become stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. Ask yourself, what is that difficult person in your life trying to teach you? Patience, boundaries, self-confidence, the ability to stay calm under pressure. What if, instead of resenting them, you could actually be grateful for the strength they're helping you develop? But Kojin's greatest test was yet to come. Because there's a difference between handling daily criticism and facing a challenge that threatens to destroy everything you believe you need to be happy. A challenge that would strip away not just his comfort, but his very identity. And that challenge was approaching faster than he could have imagined. The test that would define Kojin's spiritual journey came in the form of a devastating fire that swept through the monastery on a cold winter night. In a matter of hours, everything was destroyed. The meditation hall, where he had spent countless hours in contemplation, the library containing centuries of wisdom, the kitchen where he had learned so much from Tenzo, and most heartbreakingly, the personal belongings that connected him to his family and his past. Before I continue with Kojin's story, I want you to think about your own attachments for a moment. What are the things in your life that you believe you simply couldn't live without? Maybe it's your career that gives you identity and purpose. Maybe it's a relationship that makes you feel worthy of love. Maybe it's your home, your savings account, your reputation, or your health. Now imagine losing all of that in a single night. How would you feel? What would happen to your sense of self if everything you've worked for, everything you've built your identity around, suddenly disappeared? As Kojin stood in the smoldering ruins at dawn, watching 20 years of his life reduced to ash and smoke, he felt something break inside him. All the spiritual progress he thought he had made, all the peace he had cultivated, seemed to crumble along with the monastery walls. The other monks gathered around, some weeping openly, others standing in stunned silence. But it was Tenzo who surprised everyone. The harsh head cook who had criticized every imperfection, who had demanded excellence in the smallest details, stood among the ruins with a strange expression of peace. "How can you be so calm?" Kojin asked, his voice cracking with emotion. "Everything we worked for, everything we built, it's all gone. 20 years of our lives reduced to nothing. Think about how you react when you lose something important to you. Do you feel like your world is ending? Do you find yourself thinking, how will I go on without this? Do you feel like you've lost not just a thing, but a part of yourself?" Tenzo looked at him with eyes that held a depth Kojin had never seen before. "Is it?" he asked quietly. "Tell me, Kojin, what have you actually lost?" "Everything," Kojin replied, gesturing at the destruction around them. "Our home, our belongings, our library, our meditation hall, everything that mattered." This is the moment when Kojin encountered one of the most profound and challenging teachings in all of Zen Buddhism. A teaching that could completely transform how you think about success, failure, and what really matters in life. Tenzo smiled, the first genuine smile Kojin had ever seen from him. "My young friend, you have confused your possessions with your essence. The fire destroyed our buildings, yes. It burned our books, our furniture, our tools. But tell me, can fire burn your ability to breathe mindfully? Can flames destroy your capacity for compassion? Can smoke eliminate the wisdom you've gained through years of practice?" As Tenzo spoke, something revolutionary began to dawn on Kojin. Think about this seriously. What are the things about you that can never be taken away? Your ability to love, your capacity to learn, your power to choose how you respond to any situation, your inner strength that you've developed through facing challenges. The fire had touched nothing that truly mattered. Kojin's knowledge of meditation wasn't stored in books. It was embedded in his very being. His relationships with his fellow monks weren't contained in the walls of the monastery. They lived in the bonds of love and respect they had built together. This is what Zen masters call the understanding of impermanence, the recognition that everything in the material world is temporary, but your essential nature, your deepest self, is indestructible. This fire, Tenzo continued, is not our enemy. It is our greatest teacher. It has freed us from the illusion that our peace depends on external things. Now we must learn the deepest lesson of all, how to find joy and contentment when everything external has been stripped away. Here's a question that might transform your entire approach to life. What if your happiness doesn't actually depend on having the right job, the perfect relationship, the ideal living situation, or the amount of money you think you need? What if true peace comes from something that can never be taken away from you? This is the essence of what Zen Buddhism calls detachment, not the absence of caring, but the wisdom to know that your inner state doesn't depend on external circumstances. It's the recognition that everything in the material world is temporary, but your Buddha nature, your essential self, is eternal and indestructible. Over the following days, as the monks worked together to create temporary shelter and plan for rebuilding, Kojin witnessed something miraculous. Without the distractions of their former comfortable life, the community grew closer than ever. Their meditation practice deepened. Their conversations became more meaningful. Their appreciation for simple things, a shared meal, a warm fire, the laughter of friends, increased dramatically. Tenzo, freed from the burden of maintaining perfect standards in a perfect kitchen, revealed himself to be one of the most joyful and wise teachers in the community. He had been harsh before because he was attached to outcomes, worried about maintaining appearances, afraid of imperfection. The fire had burned away his attachment, leaving behind only his genuine desire to serve and teach. "You see," Tenzo explained to Kojin as they sat by their simple campfire, "I spent years trying to control everything around me because I was afraid of losing what I thought was important. The fire taught me that the only thing worth controlling is my own response to whatever happens. Think about your own life right now. How much energy do you spend trying to control outcomes? How much stress do you create worrying about losing things that might not even be essential to your happiness? What if you could redirect all that energy toward the one thing you actually have control over, your response to whatever life brings?" This is the profound truth at the heart of Zen Buddhism. When you stop clinging to external things for your happiness, you discover a source of joy that can never be taken away. When you cease trying to control outcomes and focus instead on controlling your response, you become truly free. Kojin began to understand that his devastation wasn't really about losing the monastery. It was about losing his attachment to the monastery. He had confused the container with the contents, the building with the practice, the external symbols with the internal reality. When you're not attached to your belongings, you experience more freedom because you're no longer worried about losing them or always wanting something better. When you're not attached to specific outcomes, you can take risks, make bold decisions, and respond to challenges with clarity and wisdom. But Kojin's education in detachment wasn't complete. Because there's a difference between losing material possessions and facing the loss of something that seems essential to your very existence. As winter deepened and the harsh mountain weather took its toll on the elderly monks, Kojin was about to face the ultimate test of letting go. His beloved master, the wise teacher who had guided him through every challenge, whose health had been failing for months, was approaching his final days. And what Kojin learned from watching his teacher face death would challenge everything he thought he knew about love, loss, and the nature of existence itself. The lesson would force him to confront the deepest attachment of all, the attachment to the people we love, and the fear of losing them forever. As winter deepened in the mountains, Kojin's beloved master grew weaker with each passing day. The old teacher who had guided him through every challenge, who had shown him how to transform enemies into teachers and find peace in the midst of chaos, was now confined to a simple mat in their makeshift shelter, his breathing shallow and labored. Think about someone in your life who means everything to you. Maybe it's a parent who has always been your source of wisdom and strength. Maybe it's a partner whose love has sustained you through your darkest moments. Maybe it's a friend who truly understands you. Now imagine facing the reality that you're going to lose them forever. Kojin sat by his master's side day and night, desperately trying to memorize every word, every gesture, every moment of their remaining time together. The thought of losing this man who had been father, teacher, and guide, all rolled into one, filled him with a terror deeper than anything he had ever experienced. "Master," Kojin whispered one evening as the old man's eyes fluttered open, "please don't leave us. We still have so much to learn from you. I still have so much to learn from you." The master's eyes, though clouded with illness, held the same gentle wisdom they always had. "Tell me, my son, what exactly are you afraid of losing?" "Everything," Kojin replied, tears streaming down his face. "Your guidance, your wisdom, your presence. Without you, how will I know if I'm on the right path? How will I face the challenges that lie ahead?" Have you ever felt this way? Have you ever felt like your world would end if you lost someone you love? Have you ever caught yourself thinking that you couldn't possibly go on without a particular person in your life? The master smiled with infinite compassion. "So you believe that my wisdom exists only in this failing body? You think that everything I've taught you will disappear when I take my final breath?" This question would lead Kojin to the most difficult and liberating teaching of his entire spiritual journey. A lesson about the ultimate form of attachment and the deepest kind of letting go. "Listen carefully," the master continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "What is it that you have truly learned from me over all these years? Is it my words? Is it my physical presence? Or is it something that has taken root within your own heart and mind?" Kojin began to understand what his teacher was pointing toward, but the understanding came with tremendous resistance. Everything inside him wanted to cling to this relationship that had defined his spiritual life for so many years. The master continued, "Every moment we shared, every lesson you absorbed, every insight you gained, where does all of that live now? Does it exist in my body, or has it become part of who you are?" This is what Zen Buddhism teaches about the deepest form of love. True love isn't about possession or permanence. It's about recognizing that what we truly receive from those we love becomes part of our very being and can never be taken away. Think about the people who have shaped you most profoundly. What did they really give you? Was it their physical presence, or was it something more lasting? The courage they helped you discover within yourself, the wisdom they awakened in your own mind, the love they taught you to feel for yourself and others. When you understand this, the master said, you realize that no one you have truly loved is ever really lost. They become part of the fabric of your being. Their influence flows through every decision you make, every kindness you show, every moment of wisdom you share with others. "But Master," Kojin protested, "what about the loneliness? What about missing your voice, your guidance, your presence?" The old teacher's eyes sparkled with gentle humor. "And where is this loneliness coming from? Is it from love, or is it from attachment? Love celebrates the connection that transcends physical form. Attachment clings to what cannot be held forever. This distinction is crucial for understanding one of the deepest teachings in Zen Buddhism. Love is expansive and freeing. It celebrates the ways that someone has enriched your life and becomes grateful for the time you've shared. Attachment is constrictive and fearful. It demands that things remain the same forever and suffers whenever change is inevitable. Think about your own relationships. Can you feel the difference between loving someone and being attached to them? Love wants the best for the other person, even if it means they must leave. Attachment wants to hold on, even when holding on causes suffering for everyone involved. Over the next few days, as his master's condition worsened, Kojin practiced what would become the most challenging exercise of his spiritual life. Learning to love without clinging, to honor their connection without demanding that it continue in the same form forever. One morning, Kojin arrived to find his master sitting up, looking more alert than he had in weeks. "Today," the old man said, "I want to teach you the most important lesson of all." The master asked Kojin to help him outside, where they sat together watching the sunrise paint the snow-covered mountains in brilliant gold and pink. "Look at this sunrise," the master said. "Is it not beautiful?" "Yes, master, it's breathtaking. And will you weep when it ends and becomes day? Will you suffer when tonight brings a different sunset with different colors?" "Of course not," Kojin replied. "Each sunrise and sunset has its own beauty. They're all part of the same continuous cycle." "Exactly," the master smiled. "And so it is with human life, with relationships, with everything we love. Each moment is precious precisely because it is temporary. Each connection is beautiful precisely because it is part of a larger flow that includes both meetings and partings. This is the final teaching about acceptance, the understanding that everything in life, including our most cherished relationships, follows natural cycles of beginning, flourishing, and ending. Fighting against this truth creates suffering. Accepting it creates peace. The master continued, "When I leave this body, I am not disappearing. I am simply changing form. The love between us, the wisdom we have shared, the growth you have experienced, all of that continues. It lives in you, it flows through you, and it will touch everyone you encounter for the rest of your life." Think about the people who have already passed from your life, whether through death, distance, or the natural changes that relationships sometimes undergo. Can you feel how they continue to influence you? Can you sense how the best of what they gave you has become permanently woven into who you are? That night, the master died peacefully in his sleep, a gentle smile on his face. When Kojin discovered him in the morning, instead of the devastation he had expected to feel, something extraordinary happened. He felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude and connection that seemed to fill not just his heart, but the entire universe. The master was gone, but his teachings lived on. His wisdom had taken root in Kojin's understanding. His compassion flowed through Kojin's actions. His love had become part of Kojin's very being. This is the deepest teaching about loss and love. When we truly understand that the essence of what we love about someone becomes part of us, death and separation lose their power to destroy us. We discover that love is not about holding on, but about allowing what we have received to flow through us and touch the world. Months later, as Kojin found himself naturally stepping into a teaching role with younger monks, he realized that his master had never really left at all. Every piece of guidance he offered, every moment of compassion he showed, every bit of wisdom he shared was his master's gift, continuing to flow into the world through him. This is the fourth great teaching. The deepest form of love is not about permanent possession, but about grateful celebration of what we have received and joyful sharing of what we have learned. When we understand this, we discover that nothing we have truly loved is ever really lost. But even with this profound understanding, Kojin would soon discover that life had one more challenge in store for him. Because knowing these truths intellectually and living them when emotions run high are two very different things. And he was about to face a situation that would test every bit of wisdom he had gained. Spring came to the mountains, and with it, a new challenge that would test everything Kojin had learned. A group of bandits had been terrorizing the region, and rumors spread that they were planning to attack the monastery. The rebuilt community, still fragile from the fire, was filled with fear and anxiety. But it wasn't the external threat that created Kojin's greatest trial. It was watching his fellow monks spiral into panic, anger, and despair. Some wanted to flee, others spoke of fighting back. The harmony they had rebuilt after the fire seemed to dissolve overnight, replaced by heated arguments and sleepless nights. Think about a time when you felt completely overwhelmed by emotions. Maybe it was during a family crisis when everyone was arguing and you felt helpless to fix anything. Maybe it was at work when deadline pressure and office politics created a storm of stress and frustration. Maybe it was during a period of personal loss when grief and anger seemed to take over your entire world. Kojin found himself caught in the middle of this emotional chaos. Despite all his training, despite everything he had learned about staying centered, he felt the familiar surge of anger rising within him. How dare these bandits threaten their peaceful community? How could his fellow monks abandon everything they had learned about compassion and wisdom? One evening, as voices rose in heated debate about how to respond to the threat, Kojin felt something snap inside him. He stood up abruptly and shouted, "Enough! You're all acting like frightened children. Where is your faith? Where is your practice?" The room fell silent. Every eye turned to him, and in that moment, Kojin saw his own reflection in their shocked faces. He had become exactly what he was criticizing, someone overwhelmed by emotion, reacting instead of responding, adding to the chaos instead of bringing peace. Have you ever had a moment like this, when you realized that in trying to fix everyone else's emotional state, you had lost control of your own? When you discovered that your anger about other people's anger was just creating more anger? Kojin fled to the ruins of the old meditation hall, where he sat alone under the stars, wrestling with the storm inside his own mind. Everything he thought he had mastered seemed to crumble in the face of this collective crisis. As he sat there, he remembered something Tenzo had said during the fire. The only thing worth controlling is your own response to whatever happens. But how do you control your response when everything inside you feels like a hurricane? Then he recalled another teaching from his master. Emotions are like weather, they come and go, but you are the sky that remains unchanged. In that moment, Kojin realized he had been trying to fight the storm instead of understanding his true nature as the vast space in which storms arise and pass away. This is where Zen Buddhism offers one of its most practical and transformative insights. You don't overcome difficult emotions by fighting them or suppressing them. You transcend them by recognizing that you are not your emotions, you are the awareness that observes them. Kojun began to watch his anger instead of being consumed by it. He noticed how it felt in his body, the tension in his shoulders, the heat in his chest, the racing of his thoughts. But instead of judging these sensations or trying to make them go away, he simply observed them with curiosity. What happens when you try this approach with your own difficult emotions? Instead of fighting your anxiety, what if you became interested in how anxiety feels in your body? Instead of judging your anger, what if you observed it like a scientist studying a fascinating phenomenon? As Kojun sat in this space of gentle observation, something remarkable happened. The anger began to lose its grip on him. It was still there, but it no longer felt overwhelming. It was just one weather pattern moving through the vast sky of his awareness. But then came an even deeper realization. His anger wasn't really about the bandits at all. It was about his attachment to having everything remain peaceful and orderly. He wanted his fellow monks to be wise and calm because their anxiety triggered his own fears about security and control. This is the profound insight that changes everything. Most of our emotional suffering comes not from external events, but from our resistance to what's happening. We suffer because we want reality to be different from what it is. Think about the last time you were really upset. Was it because of what was actually happening, or was it because what was happening didn't match your expectations of how things should be? Kojun realized that he had been trying to control not just his own emotional state, but everyone else's as well. He wanted the bandits not to exist, his fellow monks not to be afraid, and himself not to feel angry about any of it. He was fighting reality on multiple levels simultaneously. The next morning, Kojun returned to the community with a completely different energy. Instead of trying to fix everyone's fear or convince them to be more spiritual, he simply sat with them. When Brother Joken expressed terror about the bandits, Kojun listened without trying to change his mind. When Brother Mayon raged about the injustice of their situation, Kojun nodded with understanding. What happens when you stop trying to fix other people's emotions and simply allow them to be human? What changes when you offer presence instead of solutions, acceptance instead of advice? Something beautiful began to happen in the community. When people felt truly heard instead of judged, when their emotions were met with compassion instead of correction, the intensity of the collective storm began to naturally decrease. Kojun discovered that emotions, like weather systems, have their own natural life cycle. When you don't resist them or feed them with additional drama, they tend to move through and dissolve on their own. A week later, word came that the bandits had been captured by regional authorities and would no longer threaten the area. But by then, it almost didn't matter. The community had learned something far more valuable than how to handle external threats. They had learned how to remain centered in the midst of emotional storms. This is the fifth great teaching. You cannot control what emotions arise, but you can choose how you relate to them. When you stop fighting your feelings and start observing them with gentle curiosity, you discover that you are much larger than any temporary emotional state. Emotions are like clouds passing through the sky. Some are beautiful, some are stormy, some are peaceful, some are dramatic. But the sky itself remains vast, open, and unchanged by whatever weather patterns move through it. Think about your own emotional weather patterns. What if you could remain centered and peaceful regardless of whether you were experiencing the clouds of sadness, the lightning of anger, or the fog of confusion? What if you could be present with your emotions without being controlled by them? But Kojin's journey toward true emotional mastery was about to face its ultimate test. Because there's a difference between handling temporary storms and developing the kind of inner strength that remains unshakable no matter what life throws at you. And that final lesson would require him to understand something about his own nature that would transform not just how he handled difficult emotions, but how he saw himself entirely. After mastering the art of observing emotions without being controlled by them, Kojin thought he had reached the peak of spiritual understanding. But life had one more profound lesson waiting for him, a lesson that would reveal the difference between temporary calm and true invincibility. It came in the form of devastating news from his home village. A messenger arrived one cold morning with word that his elderly parents had both died in a sudden illness. His childhood home had been destroyed in a flood, and his younger sister was left with nothing, caring for 3 small children with no means of support. As Kojin listened to this cascade of tragedy, something unexpected happened. Instead of the emotional storm he had learned to navigate, instead of the anger or grief he knew how to observe, he felt something else entirely, a complete shattering of everything he thought he had achieved spiritually. Think about a moment in your life when multiple disasters struck at once, when it wasn't just one challenge you could handle, but a series of losses that seemed to attack every foundation of your security and happiness. How did you feel? Did all your coping strategies suddenly seem inadequate? For days, Kojin could barely function. He went through the motions of his duties, but inside he felt hollow, defeated, like a fraud who had been pretending to understand wisdom he had never truly possessed. All his teachings about detachment seemed meaningless when faced with the reality of his family's suffering. Brother Dojin, the young monk he had once snapped at, approached him with gentle concern. "Master Kojin, you taught us that we are not our emotions, that we are the sky in which storms pass. Where is that sky now?" Kojin looked at him with exhausted eyes. "I don't know," he whispered. "I feel like the storm has become everything. There is no sky left. Have you ever felt this way? Like all your personal growth and wisdom just evaporated when life hit you with something truly overwhelming. Like you were back to square one, questioning everything you thought you had learned about resilience and inner peace." That night, as Kojin sat in despair, he remembered something his old master had said years ago. True invincibility doesn't mean you never get knocked down. It means you discover something within yourself that can never be destroyed, no matter how many times you fall. But what was that indestructible something? It wasn't his emotional equilibrium that had been shattered. It wasn't his spiritual practices, those felt empty and meaningless. It wasn't his sense of purpose that had crumbled along with everything else. As he sat in the darkness, questioning everything, Kojin made a startling discovery. Even in the midst of his complete breakdown, even feeling like a spiritual failure, even questioning his entire path, something in him was still present, still aware, still fundamentally okay. This is the deepest secret of Zen Buddhism. Your true nature is not your thoughts, not your emotions, not your circumstances, not even your spiritual achievements. It's the unchanging awareness that witnesses all of these temporary experiences. Think about this carefully. Right now, as you listen to this story, something in you is aware of your thoughts about the story. Something in you notices your emotional reactions. Something in you observes whether you're comfortable or uncomfortable, interested or bored, hopeful or skeptical. What is that witnessing presence? Kojin realized that this awareness, this witnessing consciousness, had been present through every experience of his life. It had been there during his childhood, during his early struggles as a monk, during his conflicts with Tenzo, during the fire, during his master's death, and it was still there now in his darkest hour. This awareness didn't depend on circumstances being good or bad. It didn't require him to be spiritually accomplished or emotionally balanced. It wasn't affected by success or failure, gain or loss, praise or blame. It simply was constant, unchanging, indestructible. Here's what transformed everything for Kojin. He stopped trying to fix his emotional state and instead rested in this fundamental awareness. He didn't try to feel better about his family's tragedy. He didn't attempt to recapture his former sense of spiritual accomplishment. He simply recognized that beneath all the chaos and pain, his essential nature remained untouched. This is true invincibility, not the absence of pain or challenge, but the recognition that your deepest self is beyond the reach of any external circumstance. You are not your experiences. You are the consciousness in which all experiences arise and pass away. The next morning, something remarkable happened. Kojin's grief was still there. His concern for his sister was still real, but they no longer defined him. He could feel these emotions fully without being overwhelmed by them, because he knew they were temporary weather patterns in the vast sky of his being. From this place of recognition, he could respond to his family's crisis with clarity and compassion rather than react from desperation and panic. He arranged for funds to be sent to his sister, wrote letters of comfort, and even planned a visit, all from a place of grounded love rather than frantic anxiety. Think about how this might change your approach to your own challenges. What if you could face your difficulties from this place of fundamental okayness? What if you knew that no matter what happened, something essential about you would remain untouched and whole? This understanding didn't make Kojin's life perfect or pain-free. Challenges continued to come, emotions continued to arise, difficulties continued to test him. But he had discovered something that no external circumstance could touch: his true nature as the unchanging awareness in which all experiences occur. When younger monks came to him with their struggles, he could offer them something more than techniques for managing emotions or philosophical concepts about detachment. He could point them toward their own indestructible essence, their own unshakable foundation. This is the sixth great teaching. True invincibility is not about becoming superhuman or transcending all difficulties. It's about recognizing what you truly are beneath all the temporary experiences of life. When you discover this unchanging essence, you become genuinely unshakable, not because nothing can hurt you, but because you know that what you truly are can never be damaged. Ask yourself, can you sense this witnessing awareness in your own experience right now? Can you feel the part of you that remains constant, whether you're happy or sad, successful or struggling, confident or uncertain? This is your true refuge, your real home, your actual invincibility. But knowing this truth intellectually and living from it consistently are different things. Kojin was about to discover that true mastery means learning to nurture and maintain this recognition through the practical details of daily life. And that would require him to develop what might be the most important skill of all. Years had passed since Kojin's profound realization about his true nature, and he had grown into one of the most respected teachers in the rebuilt monastery. Younger monks sought his guidance, and visitors from distant villages came to hear his wisdom. But with this growing responsibility came a subtle danger that Kojin almost didn't recognize until it nearly destroyed everything he had learned. He had become so focused on serving others, on being available for every crisis and question, that he had forgotten to tend to his own inner garden. Day after day, he poured his energy into helping others find peace, but he neglected the practices that had once nourished his own spirit. Think about your own life right now. Are you someone who gives constantly to others, your family, your work, your community, but rarely takes time to replenish yourself? Do you feel guilty when you consider doing something just for your own well-being? Do you tell yourself that self-care is selfish when there are so many others who need your help? The warning signs came gradually. Kojin found himself feeling irritable more often. Small problems that once rolled off him like water began to stick and fester. His meditation practice, once a source of joy and renewal, became just another obligation on his endless list of duties. One morning, a young monk named Dojin approached him with a simple question about dealing with doubt, and Kojin snapped at him with an impatience that shocked them both. "Who has time for doubt?" Kojin said harshly. "Just do your work and stop overthinking everything." The young monk's face fell, and he bowed quickly before hurrying away. In that moment, Kojin saw himself clearly. He had become everything he once would have criticized. Harsh, impatient, empty of the very compassion he was supposed to be teaching. Have you ever found yourself becoming the kind of person you don't want to be because you're running on empty? Have you ever snapped at someone you care about because you hadn't taken care of your own needs? Have you ever felt like you were giving from a well that had run completely dry? That night, Kojin sat alone in the meditation hall, confronting an uncomfortable truth. In his eagerness to serve others, he had abandoned the practices that kept him centered and compassionate. He had forgotten that self-care isn't selfish. It's essential for anyone who wants to truly help others. This realization led him to rediscover one of the most important teachings in Zen Buddhism. You cannot give what you do not have. If you want to offer peace to others, you must cultivate peace within yourself. If you want to share wisdom, you must continually nourish your own understanding. Think about this honestly. When you're on an airplane, they tell you to put on your own oxygen mask before helping others. Why? Because you can't help anyone if you pass out from lack of oxygen. The same principle applies to emotional and spiritual well-being. Kojin began to rebuild his practice of inner cultivation, but this time with a deeper understanding. It wasn't enough to simply meditate or study texts. True self-care required him to pay attention to every aspect of his being: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. He started waking earlier to spend time in silent meditation before the demands of the day began. Not because it was his duty, but because those quiet moments restored his connection to the peace that was always available within him. When was the last time you gave yourself the gift of silence? When did you last sit quietly without trying to accomplish anything, fix anything, or figure anything out? What would happen if you started each day with just 10 minutes of inner stillness? Kojun also began paying attention to his body in ways he had neglected. He noticed when he was hungry and ate mindfully instead of grabbing food on the run. He recognized when he was tired and allowed himself to rest instead of pushing through exhaustion. He observed when his shoulders were tense and took time to stretch and breathe. This might sound basic, but think about how often you ignore your body's signals. How often do you eat while distracted, sleep less than you need, or carry physical tension without even noticing it? Your body is constantly communicating with you about what it needs for optimal functioning. But perhaps most importantly, Kojun learned to set boundaries, something that had been completely foreign to his people-pleasing nature. He began saying no to requests that would drain his energy without serving any essential purpose. He designated certain hours of the day as protected time for his own practice and reflection. This was revolutionary for him. For years, he had believed that being spiritual meant being available to everyone all the time. Now he understood that protecting his energy wasn't selfish, it was responsible. How could he offer genuine help if he was exhausted and depleted? Think about your own boundaries. Do you have trouble saying no to requests that drain your energy? Do you feel guilty when you prioritize your own needs? What would happen if you started protecting your time and energy the way you would protect any other valuable resource? Kojun also rediscovered the importance of activities that brought him pure joy, not because they served any spiritual purpose, but simply because they nourished his soul. He spent time in the monastery garden not to grow food for the community, but because watching things grow filled him with wonder. He practiced calligraphy not to create teachings, but because the flowing movements brought him peace. When did you last do something purely for the joy of it? When did you engage in an activity not because it was productive or helpful to others, but simply because it made you feel alive and happy? As Kojun rebuilt his practice of inner cultivation, he noticed something remarkable happening. The more he took care of himself, the more he had to offer others. His teachings became more inspired, his presence more peaceful, his compassion more genuine. By filling his own well, he had abundant water to share. This is the paradox of true self-care. The more attention you give to your own well-being, the more you're able to serve others authentically and joyfully. When you're nourished and balanced, you give from abundance rather than depletion. Kojun also learned to pay attention to his emotional and mental diet. Just as he became mindful about what food he put in his body, he became conscious of what thoughts and influences he allowed into his mind. He limited his exposure to unnecessary drama and negativity, choosing instead to surround himself with inspiration and wisdom. What are you feeding your mind on a daily basis? Are you consuming a steady diet of worry, complaint, and negativity? Or are you choosing to nourish yourself with beauty, wisdom, and positivity? Your mental diet affects your inner state just as powerfully as your physical diet affects your body. Perhaps most importantly, Kojun developed what he called compassionate discipline, the ability to be both gentle and firm with himself. When he noticed himself slipping back into old patterns of neglect, he didn't judge himself harshly. Instead, he gently redirected his attention back to the practices that served his highest good. This gentle firmness transformed everything. Instead of cycling between periods of strict discipline followed by complete collapse, he found a sustainable middle way that honored both his human needs and his spiritual aspirations. Think about your own relationship with self-discipline. Do you tend to be too harsh with yourself, creating unsustainable standards that lead to burnout? Or do you swing the other way, being so permissive that you never develop healthy habits? What would compassionate discipline look like in your life? The transformation in Kojun was evident to everyone in the monastery. Young monks began seeking him out not just for his wisdom, but for his example of how to live a balanced, sustainable spiritual life. He had become living proof that true strength comes not from endless giving, but from the wisdom to receive and replenish. This is the seventh great teaching. Inner cultivation is not a luxury or a selfish indulgence. It's the foundation of everything else. When you consistently tend to your own well-being, you create a reservoir of peace, wisdom, and compassion that naturally overflows to benefit everyone around you. Ask yourself, what would it look like to make your own inner cultivation a non-negotiable priority? What practices would nourish your body, mind, and spirit? What boundaries would you need to create to protect your energy? What would change in your life if you truly believed that taking care of yourself was one of the most important things you could do? But even with this profound understanding of self-care and inner cultivation, Kojun was about to discover that there was one more element essential for complete emotional invincibility. A practice so powerful that it could transform even the most difficult circumstances into opportunities for joy and growth. And this final teaching would come through the most unexpected source of all. 10 years after the Great Fire, Kojun was walking through the monastery grounds when he encountered an old beggar sitting by the gate. The man was clearly destitute. His clothes were ragged, his body frail, and he had the hollow look of someone who had lost everything life could take from a person. Most people would see this man and feel pity, maybe offer some food or coins, and then continue on their way. But something about this beggar caught Kojun's attention. Despite his obvious poverty and suffering, there was something in his eyes, a spark of joy that seemed completely incongruous with his circumstances. Think about someone in your life who seems to have every reason to be miserable, yet somehow maintains a positive spirit. Maybe it's someone dealing with serious illness who still finds reasons to smile. Maybe it's someone facing financial hardship who continues to help others. What is it about these people that allows them to find light in the darkest circumstances? Kojun approached the beggar and bowed respectfully. "I see something in your face that intrigues me," he said. "You appear to have lost much, yet you seem strangely peaceful. What is your secret?" The old man laughed, a sound like water bubbling over stones. "Secret? Young monk, I have no secrets. I simply practice the art of finding treasure in whatever life gives me." "Treasure?" Kojun asked, looking around at the man's meager possessions. What treasure could you possibly have found? The beggar's eyes twinkled with genuine mirth. "This morning, I woke up and my first thought was, I am still breathing. That's treasure number one. Then I realized I could still see the sunrise, treasure number two." A kind woman gave me bread, treasure number 3. Now I'm having this fascinating conversation with you, treasure number 4. By my count, I'm already richer than most kings. This encounter would teach Kojin the final and perhaps most transformative practice in all of Zen Buddhism. The cultivation of gratitude not as an occasional nice thought, but as a fundamental way of seeing reality. Most people think gratitude is about being thankful when good things happen. But what this beggar was demonstrating was something far more radical: the ability to find genuine appreciation for the gifts hidden within every moment, regardless of circumstances. Think about your own relationship with gratitude. Do you only feel grateful when life is going well? Do you save your appreciation for major blessings while overlooking the countless small miracles that surround you every day? What would happen if you started looking for treasure in the most ordinary moments? The beggar continued, "People think I'm unfortunate because I lost my home, my family, my health, my wealth. But losing all those things taught me the most valuable lesson of all: happiness doesn't come from what you have. It comes from how you see what you have." This is the profound insight at the heart of gratitude practice. Your experience of life is determined not by your circumstances, but by your perspective on those circumstances. Two people can face identical situations and have completely different experiences based on what they choose to focus on. The old man gestured toward his simple meal. "This piece of bread could be seen as proof of my poverty, or as evidence that the universe continues to provide for me. The choice of perspective is mine." And here's what most people don't realize: whichever perspective I choose becomes my reality. Kojin felt something shift inside him as he listened. He had spent years learning to detach from outcomes, to accept whatever happened, to find his center regardless of circumstances. But this beggar was teaching him something even more powerful: how to actively transform any experience into a source of joy and appreciation. What would change in your life if you started looking for the gifts hidden in your most challenging experiences? What if you could find reasons for gratitude even in the midst of difficulty, loss, or disappointment? The beggar shared his simple meal with Kojin, and as they ate together, he began to demonstrate this practice in real time. Every bite brought appreciation for the farmer who grew the grain, the baker who made the bread, the woman who shared it. Every breath brought gratitude for the air, the lungs that processed it, the life force that sustained them both. "This isn't just positive thinking," the old man explained. "This is training your mind to see what's actually there instead of focusing only on what's missing." Most people live in poverty consciousness, always aware of what they lack. I choose to live in abundance consciousness, always aware of what I have. Over the following weeks, Kojin began practicing this radical form of gratitude. Instead of waiting for good things to appreciate, he started looking for appreciation opportunities in every moment. The warmth of sunlight on his face, the taste of simple tea, the sound of rain on the roof, the privilege of having work to do, the gift of problems to solve. Think about this. How many miraculous things are happening in your life right now that you're taking for granted? Your heart is beating without you having to think about it. Your eyes are processing light and color. Your mind is understanding these words. Air is flowing in and out of your lungs automatically. What if you started seeing these everyday miracles as genuine cause for wonder and appreciation. But the most profound transformation came when Kojin began applying gratitude practice to his most difficult experiences. When a young monk challenged his authority, instead of feeling frustrated, Kojin found appreciation for the opportunity to practice patience. When his old back injury flared up, he discovered gratitude for all the years his body had served him well. This isn't about pretending that difficulties are wonderful or denying legitimate pain. It's about developing the ability to find authentic gifts within challenging experiences, the strength you develop, the wisdom you gain, the compassion you cultivate, the connections you deepen. What would happen if you could find genuine appreciation for the ways your most difficult experiences have contributed to your growth, your resilience, your understanding of life? As months passed, this gratitude practice transformed not just Kojin's inner experience, but his entire presence in the world. Students noticed that he had developed an almost magnetic quality. People were drawn to his genuine joy and appreciation for life. His teachings became more inspiring because they came from a place of authentic wonder rather than duty. The beggar, whose name Kojin never learned, eventually moved on in his wanderings. But his gift remained, the understanding that gratitude is not just a nice feeling, but a powerful technology for transforming any experience into treasure. This is the eighth and final great teaching. Gratitude is the master key that unlocks abundance in any circumstance. When you train yourself to see the gifts that are always present, you discover that you're surrounded by riches that no external condition can touch. Years later, when students would ask Kojin for the secret to unshakable happiness, he would smile and point toward the simplest things around them: a flower blooming, a bird singing, the breath moving in and out of their bodies, and remind them that the treasure they sought was always right there, waiting to be noticed. As our hour together comes to an end, I want you to realize something profound. You now possess the same wisdom that transformed Kojin from a reactive young monk into an emotionally invincible master. These aren't just beautiful stories from the distant past, they're a roadmap for your own transformation. You've learned to see criticism as a mirror reflecting others' pain rather than truth about your worth. You understand that difficult people are actually teachers, showing you where to grow stronger. You know that your peace doesn't depend on external circumstances, and that emotions are temporary weather in the unchanging sky of your awareness. Most importantly, you've discovered that true invincibility isn't about avoiding life's challenges. It's about knowing that your essential nature can never be damaged by anything that happens to you. The question now isn't whether these teachings work, but whether you'll practice them. Start today. Choose one principle that resonated most deeply and begin applying it to your current challenges. Your journey to emotional bulletproofing begins with a single step, and that step is available to you right now.